What is going on, everybody? Today's video, we're going to cover a topic that I see people struggle with all the time, and that is loading a car with a very low splitter onto a trailer. I'm going to show you a neat little trick that I use on my GT350 here, because this is a perfect candidate where the splitter is not a quick detach, unlike the race car. But hopefully it helps you out. If you learned something, give this video a thumbs up, please subscribe, and let's jump into it. Alright, so very first thing we're going to do is take a measurement. Right now the car is sitting like it normally would, and we'll call that, believe it or not, we're at like 2 and 3/4. Actually, you know what, we'll go to the flat top, because that's a little bit of a more precise measurement. So we'll call it 3.5 to the top of the splitter right here. Yeah, about 3.5. So if you watch my channel, I kind of showed this in a previous video last time I was out with this car. My original version I made out of PLA, just 3D printed, and they are right here. But you can see what happened to them. They kind of deformed on me. I got a chunk of something on my hand. This one obviously deformed really bad. The original shape should have been something like these guys. Now we'll get into these in a second. And these were kind of a takeoff from this. This can just be bought over the counter. This is just like a spring rubber. The problem is when I would put this in the car, or wedge it into the spring when the car was up, one, it wouldn't really stay. It only kind of fit like that. And during transport, I guess the spring would squeeze this in some sort of way where they kept splitting. It's some sort of very hard rubber. So they would just kind of like crack in half on me. So then I thought, okay, I need to kind of make my own deal. That's where these came about. And these actually worked really well. Problem is, at the end of the track day, when everything was all warm and I put them in, they obviously deformed on me. One last thing that's kind of unique to my car, or if you have our coilover conversion kits, which you can't see them in there. There's enough room to fit just a straight up thick spacer underneath of the spring when the wheels are dropped, or when the car is jacked up and the tires are in droop. So that's what these are, but again, you can see, the warmth got to the PLA, didn't work. Now I could try printing them in PETG. I have that capability. One of my 3D printers is modified to print even higher temp stuff, but it's kind of really pushing it. I don't think I have any on hand, so we're actually going to switch gears a little bit in this video and use a machine that I don't think has really been on the channel. But we're going to use my little 2.5 axis CNC to cut out, I just kind of pointed these out a second ago, ones out of a solid sheet of ABS. Now ABS has a TG of around 105 Celsius, where PLA I think is like 55, 60 degrees C. So hopefully they'll hold up to the heat at the end of a track day when you put them back in to load your car on and make it home. But since I already have the model, it's pretty easy. We're just going to make a little bit of a tool path and go cut them out. Now if you're doing this on your own, you would probably be doing this while your spring is like in the car. Obviously you got to jack the car up and let the wheels droop so the spring unloads. And then at that point you can kind of just take some measurements of whatever you need. If you want to get super accurate, you can use a micrometer or caliper, whatever you want to call this tool. And then from there, just make your little CAD model sketch to kind of fit your springs. So I think that's about it. We're going to jump into the cam side of things, make our little tool paths, and go cut them out. All right, so here we are on Fusion 360, and this is a pretty easy thing. I'm just doing a 2D contour around the whole thing. Now we could do a 2D chamfer around them, because the model does have a chamfer. But if I bring in the ones I was tinkering with yesterday, honestly, since I can only really chamfer one side, I don't know, it doesn't really do anything for the finished part. So for the sake of simplicity, we're literally just going to cut these out of a sheet of ABS. So now that the tool path is good, if we go back to it, let's simulate it real quick. And you can see how it just goes around. It's going to cut them all out. But I'm pretty much doing a 1/100th step down. And we are leaving little tabs on the bottom. Let's see if you can see them. So that way when we cut through, they won't just like pop loose, and then just razor blade just kind of cut those little tabs real quick, so you'll see that in a second. But I think we're good enough to send this to the machine and cut them out. All right, guys, so we're already set up on my 4030. We're ready to cut, well, almost ready to cut out. We got to move this into position. If we go back to Fusion, you can see how we're going to be starting on the that would be the forward left point. So we're going to start cutting somewhere right around this point. We have so much extra room, we don't have to be super accurate. So we're already post-processed, and in the controller, you can see there's our toolpath. So right now we need to basically jog the machine to where it needs to go. So if I end up hitting that, you can see how I can bring it to where we need to. So now we got to set XY. We're going to go back up with the Z. We need to put it where it's flat. Hook up the Z probe. Let's do our Z probe. It was interesting how it did it twice for some reason. So now we're all set. We just get to send it. You can see yesterday, I'll throw this in real quick, how I cut out individual ones because I was kind of tinkering with a few things, putting like chamfer on it and stuff. This is my first time trying to cut 6 at once, and I am doing a little bit more of an aggressive cut. So this will be a little bit of a learning experience for me as well. So if we send, I want to keep my hand on the just in case. That's actually going pretty good. So I got to clean them off. Obviously, this makes a mess, so now you know why I prefer 3D printing whenever possible. Little mistake on my end. I probably should have started over and in just a tiny bit more, because you can see we cut off this outside wall, and this outer one actually just kind of flung off. So in the time lapse, you may have seen me kind of like, I had to like put like a screwdriver on top of it while the bit was coming around. But yeah, pretty good. One thing I could easily improve, if I put this like on something, because I'm kind of hitting the spoil board very barely, but that would be nice. But yeah, like I said, I don't use this machine that often. But yeah, there we go. So first 6 cut out. We'll do the next 6. All right, so the next 6 cut out. You can see I left like a little bit more room, so this piece wouldn't fall out. So this one kind of hung in there. You can see they are kind of moving around, and some of these pieces maybe kind of like pinched on the, you know, the end mill a tiny bit. I do have the, you know, the super glue trick where you put like painter's tape down. Didn't use it on this one. Didn't think it was really an issue. You know, I know there are tricks to kind of hold your stock down a little bit better, but this is such a quick and dirty project, meh, just kind of skipped it. So now we're going to do the same thing on our, what we're going to call like our little horseshoe. We're going to cut these out of this 3/4 inch sheet of ABS, but it's going to be the same process. We'll cut them out and then we'll go put it all on the car. Alright, so the bottom shims are cut out. What's kind of cool about this is you can see the time was 7 minutes and 27 seconds to cut those out. Now granted, we have some setup time with the machine and everything, but just for fun, If I were to 3D print them with a 3mm wall, we're looking at a little over 3 hours. Now granted, this is on a little ender, you know, a new machine can maybe do it faster. And I guess if you want to get a little crazy, how much time do I have cleaning this up afterwards? But yeah, definitely some benefits in this machine, just from the fact that it kind of cuts out what you need much faster than printing it. All right, so if we head under the car, I'm doing this one-handed. You can see how the spring is loose, and pretty much you just gotta press them in. All right, doing this one-handed is actually a bit of a pain. Oop. There you go. So I cut them to where they are tight, because when the car sits on them, they're probably going to deform a tiny bit, but that way, you know, they won't fall out on you there, and they're tight enough. So I'll get the rest of them in and show you what we get. All right, so there you can see we got 3 in the front, 3 in the back. And being able to use both hands really was maybe about 30 seconds to put these in. Now they're already in the other side. We're gonna let it down and see what we get just by locking out the springs. Because this situation is probably what most people would do. Like I mentioned earlier, with my coilover conversion kit, the spacing of everything, that spring actually has some extra space in it. If you have some sort of coilover that has a helper spring, which only has, I don't know, maybe a 20 inch-pound spring rate, you could probably push the spring down or up, either one, and kind of do the same thing. But let's see where we're at with just locking up the spring first. All right, so here we are back on the ground. You know, jack's loose. I don't want you to think I'm playing any tricks here. And if you remember the top, we were at about 3.5. And we are now at about 5 3/4. And if you want to be accurate, kind of going to the bottom, we're at 5. So we picked up, let's see, we picked up about 2 1/4 inches of splitter height just by locking out the springs, which already is pretty good. You know, loading your car on and off a trailer, an extra 2 inches or so of splitter height goes a long way for sure. But now we're gonna put in these lower perches and see what we get out of those as well. Now, jacking up one side of the car, there's still weight on the other side of the car. That sway bar is actually holding this wheel up a little bit. So what I like to do is when I jack up one side, I'll put a jack under the subframe pretty close to the center of the car. As long as your car has a good point to do this, you can do this way. And when we let the car down, you'll see this wheel drop a little bit more. There we go. So now we're unloaded. We can get in here, put in our extra shim, spacer, whatever you want to call it. Again, I'm probably going to need 2 hands. Oh, there we go. Got it. There we go. And that's it. We'll do the other side and see what we get. All right, so we're back down on the ground. We'll give this a couple bounces, let it settle. And we are now at darn near 7 inches, 6 7/8 to the top of the splitter. Bottom of the splitter, 6 1/4 or so. All right, so there you go. This project is pretty much done. As you can see, I was able to get all of the, I'll call them the spring lockouts and the spacer in only by jacking one side and using that little jack trick. It was maybe 30 seconds or so to snap all 6 of those spring lockouts in. Really wasn't too bad. So when I get to the track, lift up the one side, do the jack trick, pull everything out, it might be 2 minutes, you know, which is a much easier option than, you know, having to unbolt a splitter. Now, I have seen some splitter release systems and everything, quick release stuff. A little more like engineering has to go into them to get them to work right and everything. You know, but, you know, obviously that's a good option. But I just wanted to show everybody this because, like I said, my car kind of falls into that category where can't quite make a quick release splitter since our splitter kits kind of go to some of the factory under tray stuff and everything. But yeah, definitely an option. Now, one last thing I want to touch on is if you don't have a little CNC machine like I do or a 3D printer that can print out higher temp plastics, there's always the good old trusty bandsaw. If you really wanted to, you could probably cut out some sort of shape, something or other that works. As you can see, the shapes that I made weren't anything crazy. Cut them out, buy like a sheet of plastic like I did. Shoot, you could probably use wood. I guess that's about it, plastic and wood. You could maybe make them out of like aluminum or something, but that'd kind of be a little bit trickier. But anyway, so that's where we're going to wrap this one up. Hope you guys learned something. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.